I think the most of our dynasty quarterbacks are actually in a really interesting spot right now, kind of aside from the top guys that we all know who they are. So we're going to get into the top 20 dynasty rankings. Just make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support because this still is a new dynasty channel exclusively for Dynasty Fantasy Football. So get into our first tier right here. I've got Jaden Daniels at number 1 and Josh Allen at number 2, and I've got Lamar at number 3. And honestly, I feel pretty good about having Jaden Daniels as the number 1. Obviously, he's the younger guy by like 5 to 6 years between both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. He just had one of the best, if not the very best, rookie seasons of any quarterback in the history of fantasy football. It was absolutely insane what Jaden Daniels was able to put together with minimal weapons, I might add. So now that the fact that they get another guy like Deebo Samuel, maybe draft a running back here in this next class, which is very strong with running backs as we all know, I think Jaden Daniels' future is really just kind of understood to be unbelievably elite in Dynasty Fantasy Football. But I've got Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson here in this same tier because I can also see an argument if you'd rather prefer the veteran guy over the younger guy who still has some team needs that they need to address with the Washington Commanders. I think with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, you can order these two particularly however you want to. I prefer Josh Allen just a little bit just because I know that Josh Allen is more of an Iron Man. He doesn't really get injured as much historically as Lamar Jackson has had. And I think that's really the only difference. Like, both of these guys in their primes and, like, when they're on, they can average 22, 25 fantasy points per game. Lamar Jackson, actually, I used to always think was going to be the guy who had a little bit of a shorter career just because of his running style and how he plays. I think he's the ultimate outlier of all outliers in the history of the NFL. He runs frequently, and he barely gets hit hard. Barely. He's unbelievable. So I can understand if you want to put Lamar at 2 over Josh Allen at 3, but I think this is a really solid tier. That is the top notch for dynasty quarterbacks. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Jalen Hurts at 4 and Patrick Mahomes at 5. I could maybe understand an argument if you wanted to put Jalen Hurts in that top tier as well. I've got Jalen Hurts down here mostly because I don't trust Jalen Hurts as a thrower. And so I think that there will be years in the future when he loses a little bit of rushing ability, as he gets closer to his 30s, gets into 30, to where he just isn't as dominant as a fantasy player long term. Like, I think the next several years with Jalen are going to be great. I think he'll be averaging between 20 to 24 to 25 fantasy points per game because he can still run. He still has the tush push, obviously. That's not going away. But I do think that in, 4 years, 5, 6 years, I think when that starts to kind of trickle off towards the end of his career, I just don't trust him as a thrower as much. Now, with Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, it's really interesting. I was kind of looking back at someone like a Tom Brady because I think Tom Brady is kind of the biggest comparison for Patrick Mahomes. At this point, because Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls, he's been to 5. Mahomes is like a first ballot Hall of Famer. Everybody understands that if he retired today. And what we've seen with Mahomes over the past several years without Tyreek Hill is a lot of like mediocre fantasy football play. And Tom Brady, when I looked at him, he had some years where he had like quarterback 11, quarterback 12 finishes. And I think Mahomes is kind of entering that next phase of his career where it's less about stats and numbers and more about just making sure that they claim victory every single week. And I think Mahomes is kind of in that spot. So Mahomes is obviously great. He's never going to kill you in the sense of like, having an Anthony Richardson, for example. But Mahomes is definitely not the quarterback that he used to be in fantasy football. And I think it's time to expect that on a yearly basis from Mahomes. They just don't have the weapons that they used to have. And then rounding out this tier, I've got Joe Burrow at 6 and CJ Stroud at 7. Obviously, Joe Burrow is the best quarterback between Mahomes and CJ Stroud. Not better than Jalen Hurts, maybe, depending on the year. But Joe Burrow, there's a couple issues that I have with him ultimately. Number one is that he's already close to 30. He was an older rookie in the 2020 draft, and so this guy is already close to 30. He's 28 right now, right? So Joe Burrow obviously has not had a clean bill of health throughout his entire NFL career. The guy has been beaten and battered because of bad offensive line play over the years. So there's no question like what Joe Burrow can do when the guy is fully healthy, and now he's got his 2 weapons locked up for the foreseeable future. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are now back. That's all great stuff, and I love Joe Burrow, but I do worry about Joe Burrow and the ability for that offense to be able to consistently sustain good protection for him on the offensive line. They already haven't had that his entire career. It's not getting any easier now that you signed both of these wide receivers to $100 million deals. I just don't really know how I can feel about Joe Burrow long term as I would about Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, because Joe Burrow is already very, very injured, and Joe Burrow is also close to 30. I think that he's going to get pounded a couple more times, to say the least, but I love Joe Burrow, obviously, and while he's here, Joe Burrow's elite. CJ Stroud at 7. I think CJ Stroud is going to be an interesting watch in year 3, year 4. Now, based on what they've done to start out his year 3 offseason, I haven't loved it, right? They move on from Stephon Diggs, which I don't particularly find to be an issue, but then they also just move off of offensive linemen like they're going to have like 10,000 picks this in the NFL draft to reassure that offensive line is good. I just don't really love the direction that their offense is moving towards. And CJ Stroud, a huge problem with him in 2024 was he was under duress constantly. So CJ Stroud, at this moment in time, I don't think has the support offensively that he probably needs. Because I think that what we saw his rookie year was great, no question about it. But there was obviously a massive, massive step down in 2024. So I just think CJ Stroud needs a little bit more help. I think he needs a little bit more wide receiver help. I think CJ Stroud needs more help, and I don't think he's getting that right now. But obviously, he's young. I like his future. He's a good quarterback. He's going to be inside T2. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Bo Nix at number 8 and Kyler at number 9. So with Bo Nix here, I think that Bo Nix is in a very good spot. Like, arguably better than Jayden Daniels, fit-wise. Not saying Bo Nix is better. Obviously, he's at number 8 and Jaden's at number 1. Bo Nix being able to be with Sean Payton, a guy who is a quarterback genius. Bo Nix is in a great spot with Sean Payton. They're building the offensive line. They're building up some wide receiver help. They're going to get a running back in this draft. Bo Nix is in really good shape to continue growing. And obviously what we saw from Bo Nix was really up and down, but just looking at it from a season perspective, seeing the numbers on the screen, like he had a good rookie season in fantasy football. So I just think another year with Sean Payton, and that future continues to build between those two. This is going to be a really rich dynasty quarterback. I think Bo Nix is the second best quarterback in this dynasty rookie class from 2024, and I really like him right now in dynasty. Kyler at number 9, the only problem I have with him is, do the Cardinals eventually get tired of just kind of mediocre seasons with Kyler Murray and eventually move off him? Because there's no question about what the talent level is, right? Kyler Murray obviously didn't have his best fantasy season in 2024. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely was not his best. But Kyler Murray also just had a lot of stretches where he just played really bad football. Now, I don't think that the Cardinals will move on anytime soon, but I do think it could be potentially on the horizon. But while he's still there, another year with Marvin Harrison Jr., I do like their coaching staff as well. I think there is still things to be excited about with the Cardinals, so I've got him here still inside the top 10. And then Justin Herbert at number 10 to round out this tier. Justin Herbert is also in a pretty solid spot. I wouldn't say it's the best for fantasy football, though, because we all know Jim Harbaugh is a run-first coach. This is what Jim Harbaugh was always going to be when they hired him in 2024. We obviously saw a massive downturn for Justin Herbert in fantasy football in 2024. Now, that was always going to come. As I'd said before the season, it was always going to come. But Justin Herbert still is very accurate. He still is a very smart passer. 23 touchdowns and 3 interceptions is what he had in 2024. So the guy knows how to play the position at a very high level. I don't love the direction that their weapons are still going into. I still think they need plenty more weapons offensively to really help Justin Herbert get from, middle tier quarterback 2 to like low end quarterback 1. I don't think Justin Herbert's ceiling is ever going to be top 3 again. I just don't think that's the way Jim Harbaugh wants to play football. So I do have Herbert at number 10 just because he is a very secure quarterback in his spot in Los Angeles. Now, this next tier drop is where I think a lot of things change. There's a lot of uncertainty. This is a big tier break right here. Jordan Love at 11, Caleb Williams at 12, and Cam Ward at 13 in this tier. Jordan Love, if you would have, last year when I was talking about Jordan Love, I loved Jordan Love. I thought that he was an emerging star at the quarterback position. They signed him to a big deal, and he was really coming off a really good season to start out his NFL career, basically. Then 2024 happened, and obviously the numbers are not particularly great with Jordan Love. 16.3 fantasy points per game, 63% completion percentage, 11 interceptions, 25 passing touchdowns. The guy definitely did not play the cleanest football, and he had a lot of games where he actually crushed weeks. But he also had a lot of games where he played really well. And I will say this, the one thing that keeps me on the hook with Jordan Love is that last year, he dealt with injury all year. The first game of the year against the Eagles, he had a really big knee injury, but he played through it for the majority of the season, and he also had other injuries as well because that offensive line started to get injured towards the end of the season, and he just started taking more hits. Jordan Love, I still do believe in the player and the talent, and I also believe in the landing spot with Green Bay because I love their coaching staff. But I don't love their weapons. I think they still do need a probably number one wide receiver. And I also do think that Jordan Love, just because of 2024, and we just haven't seen that much of him, I still can't fully buy into the guy, so I'm going with him at number 11. Caleb Williams, though, I'd rather have Jordan Love over Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, I like the direction. I do. I think Ben Johnson is going to be a really good fit for Caleb Williams. I think that Ben Johnson bringing over that Detroit offense is going to be a big fit. They're already improving the offensive line. They're going to improve the run game as well. That will take pressure off of Caleb Williams without a doubt. But I also think that Caleb Williams as a player needs to bear responsibility for the amount of sacks that he took in 2024. This was very similar to a Russell Wilson when he was in his prime in Seattle. There was lots of scouts, lots of film evaluators who evaluated Russell Wilson when he was in his prime, and they said, these Seahawks offensive linemen, they get a lot of flack. But the reality is Russell Wilson is causing so many sacks because he's holding on the ball forever. That's Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is like that. I'm not defending the Chicago Bears offensive line from 2024. They obviously weren't good, but I don't know if it's going to be fixed with a better offensive line because Caleb is just that kind of quarterback. So I do have some issues still with Caleb's playing style, but the weapons he's got, the coaching he's got, it's a big improvement. So I do think that we will see a leap in 2025. Cam Ward to round out this tier. Obviously, the rookie quarterback is probably going number one. By all accounts, I can't imagine if the Tennessee Titans do not pick Cam Ward at number one. Cam Ward is going to be in a spot in Tennessee in all likelihood that I just don't love. This was a very similar thing to Jane Daniels when he went to the Washington Commanders. Not a good team fit, but Cam Ward, maybe he can kind of resurrect the franchise a little bit. I still don't believe in that coach over there, Callahan, and I do think that they still need offensive line upgrades to a maximum level as well. So Cam Ward's going to start out at a disadvantage here. It's just going to come down to how good can the guy really be. We know the guy's got a really good arm. He's got the most arm talent in this class by far. He's a decent enough athlete to maybe get you a couple rushing touchdowns a year, extend plays out of the pocket as well. Cam Ward's a good player, and I do think that the future for Cam Ward is going to depend on how well and how competent the Tennessee coaching staff really is. And I also just think that when you look at the guys in this tier, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Cam Ward, none of them are my favorite dynasty quarterbacks. But if you're looking to hop into a fantasy draft right now because you just miss fantasy football and want to be a part of it, I think all three of these guys actually have good prices. You can look at their prices on the screen right now on Underdog. I've done drafts where I've actually paired Jordan Love with Cam Ward because both of those guys are really affordable. I've done it with Caleb Williams and Cam Ward as well. Caleb Williams and Justin Fields. Jordan Love and Justin Fields. Those are really good combos right there because those quarterbacks are all really, really affordable at this price on Underdog right now. So if you do want to join an Underdog draft today, you can go down in the comments and grab the link that's there, and you'll use code FVN to sign up for Underdog. And when you get in on one of these drafts, either the $10 draft that has a payout of $250,000 in first place, when you deposit $10, they'll match that first deposit 50% up to $1,000 when you use code FFN. So dropping out to our next tier right here, I've got Jared Goff at 14 and Brock Purdy at 15. This is kind of just a philosophical thing for me personally because Jared Goff, we know what he is capable of doing. Jared Goff is very capable of having week-winning performances in fantasy football. Jared Goff, the last several years that he's been in Detroit have been really, really positive stuff for fantasy football purposes. Now, Brock Purdy is the younger quarterback, obviously, but Jared Goff is only 30 years old. The guy's not very old, and he's got plenty of weapons. Now, post Ben Johnson, we'll see how that offense runs. I'm not too worried about Jared Goff and his future because I know that the guy is really accurate. I know he can sling the rock a lot. So I think Jared Goff is still a quarterback that I just prefer over more uncertain guys. And I would classify Brock Purdy as kind of an uncertain guy. You know, I think Brock Purdy will be the 49ers quarterback moving forward. They've already talked about, we're already in contract extension talks with him. I don't think that he's going anywhere. I just think that Brock Purdy, 2024 was a big kind of exposure year for Brock Purdy. He got exposed. Like, he didn't have his weapons, and he was being counted on to lead this team to victory, and he was kind of folding a lot. Now, Brock Purdy's still in fantasy football, pretty good season, but I do think that Brock Purdy is not going to be a ceiling quarterback for the entirety of his career. I think he'll have years where he's like a top 10 quarterback. I think he'll have other years where he's like a 15 quarterback, 16 type of season. So I think Brock Purdy is just going to be handicapped because he's just not a ceiling player. And again, I still prefer those guys just philosophically over Michael Penix and Drake May. Now, I like Penix more than Drake May for sure. I like Penix because I think his situation is better. Not from a coaching perspective. I trust May's coaching staff more than I trust Penix's coaching staff. But from a weapons perspective, he's easily got the better situation. He's got Kyle Pitts one more year. Maybe we can catch something with him. Probably not. But he's got Drake London, obviously, who will be an Atlanta Falcon for the foreseeable future. He's got a dominant run game. They've still got a good offensive line. Like, he's got the pieces in place in order to grow off of his rookie year, which we didn't see much of it. So I think that looking at the numbers on the screen is just kind of doing him a disservice. But I do think that Michael Penix has an easier path to growing in his second year based on weapons than Drake May does. When you look at Drake May, his weapons are still bad. And I have a reality check for a lot of people. His weapons won't be great either. Even in the draft, they're not going to do much. You want to know why? Because Mike Vrabel, although I really like him as a coach, I think he's a really good coach who's proven he can win. He's a defensive guy, and he doesn't really care that much about having dominant weapons. He had an A.J. Brown, and he traded him to go get Treylon Burks. Now, A.J. Brown forced his hand a little bit there, but he didn't even have a viable number 2 wide receiver that he could kind of complement with Treylon Burks to maybe help him grow. And, of course, he turned out to be a disaster. Point being is this. Drake May is still going to have a very similar weaponry in 2025 that he had in 2024. The ultimate problem is going to be that I don't think that there's going to be enough there for him to grow with that weaponry. Essentially what it's going to come down to is, can he take that leap as a dominant quarterback? I think it's possible for sure, and I still like him in Dynasty, but I definitely prefer the veteran guys and Michael Penix over Drake May. Now, Shedeur Sanders is at 18 to round out this tier in Dynasty. And again, I think with Shedeur Sanders, the point I've been trying to make with this tier right here is I prefer veteran guys that we know can play ball over the rookie guys / second-year guys that we still don't really know the case on. I like Drake May. I like Michael Penix. Definitely better than I like Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is really in a weird spot right now because his draft stock is kind of all over the place. A lot of teams are saying they don't like his attitude. A lot of teams are saying, yeah, we're probably still going to take him, probably at least look at him. And I think that he will definitely go top 5 in this draft because of the quarterback needs, specifically with the Giants and the Browns. I think that's absolutely going to be the case. But with Shedeur Sanders, I just don't see a ceiling there that's going to be very high. With Cam Ward, I definitely like his arm talent more, but their athleticism is very similar. Shedeur Sanders, I don't think, is the arm talent that Cam Ward is. So I think that Shedeur Sanders, if he ends up with one of those bad teams, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for him to be able to succeed in fantasy football because there's going to be an issue with an offensive line. There's going to be dysfunction in the front office. So Shedeur Sanders, if he falls like kind of back in the draft, maybe he goes to the Rams, they want to develop him a little bit and then let Matt Stafford go off to pasture in a year or two. I think that's a good spot for him. But if he goes to the Browns, if he goes to the Giants, he's in trouble. And I don't love Shedeur Sanders as a prospect, so I've got him down here at 18. And dropping down to our final tier, I think these guys are fine. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Clearly, Baker Mayfield is a quarterback that I trust more to provide fantasy upside in 2025 particularly than Sam Darnold for sure. Baker Mayfield has proven with Tampa Bay that regardless of who the offensive coordinator is, he's going to succeed. He's earned that respect for sure. But Baker Mayfield's also 30 years old, or just about to be. I can't remember which one. The guy is clearly not, old in quarterback terms, but he's getting older. And Baker Mayfield, the problem with him is that he does play kind of a reckless brand of football. So I don't worry about him being able to put up numbers. Obviously, you can see the numbers on the screen. The dude was awesome last year. And the year before that, he was pretty good as well. But Baker Mayfield, I do worry about the brand of football that he plays, shortening his career a little bit. I love the weapons. I think he'll be good in 2025. But beyond that, I start to get kind of worried about his longevity. And then Sam Darnold here, I honestly have no idea if he's going to work. Based on right now, the contract that they gave him, I'd say he's a solid dynasty quarterback. Bottom end quarterback too, but I still think worth rostering definitely in dynasty. I think that him and Jack Smith-Njigba will be a good pairing because I think JSN is a quarterback's best friend. He can run any route in the route tree. But I don't love, the direction of this coaching staff like I loved it in Minnesota. He was greatly helped by Kevin O'Connell, the weapons they had there, the offensive line he had there. I don't feel the exact same way in Seattle. Decent offensive line, good weapon with Jack Smith-Njigba. Running game is good as well. But I don't know if Sam Darnold is going to sustain that level of play that he did in 2024. So I've got my issues here with Sam. So let me know what you think about our Dynasty quarterbacks right now. And if you want to see the top rookies in this year's Dynasty rookie class, click on this video right here.